Hello, everybody, and you are very welcome to this episode of Successful Perspectives. Successful Perspectives is when we get to know one of our members from our very selective and influential network, Boardroom by EMIR. And I'm delighted for this episode to be joined by my friend, Serge Bekhaazi, who is the Managing Director for Middle East and Africa at BMI Group. Serge, always great to see you, and thanks for sharing some time with me today. You're very welcome.
Trevor, thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, and great to see you as well. And Happy New Year.
Yes, exactly. Very, very true. Okay, so let's dive into it, right, Serge? I've had the pleasure, and this is true, I've had the pleasure of getting to know you over in recent years. And it's interesting, you get to know someone from the outside, right? I got to know you through your career, through work, but we haven't worked with one another, so to speak. If I were to take a look at Serge and analyze Serge, I would say he's a family man first. He's into his health and fitness, into his gym, healthy lifestyle. He's into his music. And you bring genuinely an unbridled passion to everything. You know, you're a great guy to go and meet because you always have good ideas and a lot of energy. But what about the people that would work with you or have worked with you throughout your career as well? How would they and how would you describe your leadership philosophy? Because I don't really get to see that on a day-to-day basis.
Well, first of all, Trevor, thank you very much. This is very humbling. I don't know if I deserve all of that, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Listen, I think my main philosophy in leadership is really getting to know your people. As simple as that. Genuinely getting to know your people. You know, getting to know what ticks them. Getting to know what does it take to make sure that they become the best versions of themselves as they work for you or for the organization. Because I think once that is set, Trevor, then as a leader, you will have the ability to move people around and place the right people in the right jobs. I mean, we don't only want good people, right? We want the right people in the right jobs. And I truly believe that managing a process around HR or managing all these great processes that exist would facilitate that. But if the leader doesn't genuinely know their own people really to a detailed level, that process might yield to wrong results. And as you and I both know, and you just mentioned it in the beginning, nothing is more valuable than having the right people in the right jobs because everything else then flows.
What does that look like for you in terms of really getting to know someone, particularly, you know, during that hiring process? I've just before this interview, I just finished an interview for somebody that could potentially join our organization. What does that look like for you in trying to really figure out who that person is?
That's a very good question. I like to know the true essence of the person. You know, I'm not interested in reading their CV. I'm not interested in knowing really what they've done on a professional or a personal level. I want to know how they think. I want to know their core value system, because that for me is essential. And I want to know what really excites them at work and in life. And then I could really understand if there would be a chemistry or a blend, because sometimes, you know, we click and sometimes we don't click. It's human nature. And I really look for those hidden gems, which are personality, trait related, value system related, because everything else could either be learned or is available on paper for us to read. If that makes sense, Trevor.
It does perfectly. And given your career, and you've worked for a lot of big international companies, including, you know, General Electric, you were a regional GM in a past life, going back in your career. Have you had, you know, mentors and people that you've looked up to, or leaders, whether when you were younger or throughout your career, that you've looked up to and taken inspiration from?
Absolutely. I don't remember a single year in my career from the early fresh graduate years throughout until today where I did not have mentors. I really think that the winning formula, and that's only my opinion, in mentorship is really to have three. if possible, 3 different mentors. I would always have a mentor who is more experienced, wiser, more mature, because I always bounce ideas back with that mentor about the future me, right? And the future ambitions. Then I would have a mentor from my own age group, from my own entourage. Those would be the buddy mentors whom I bounce ideas with, share issues, hurdles, opportunities, solutions. And then very important, and I learned this actually recently, mentors who are much younger than me. And I think that's interesting. I don't think we all think of that. And those younger mentors don't necessarily know that they mentor us, but they keep my software up to date. They keep me engaged in all these new things. I mean, I can't follow up with TikTok and Snapchat and all the digital tools and artificial intelligence. They're there to help serve that purpose and keep us fresh and going. But I think that it's important to know that the type of discussion that I've had with those mentors throughout my career differs. I mean, they've always been there and they could be different people, but what we speak about when I'm a 3-year in professional versus when I'm a managing director could be different. But as long as the feedback is there and it's honest, it's the greatest gift. And if we don't take feedback genuinely and don't act on it, I don't think we can develop both personally and professionally.
I like that, especially, and you can see the wisdom in that answer. Having a mentor that's, significantly more mature, let's put it that way.
Yes.
They've been down the path of life a little bit further down that journey, so they can give you some signals on how that has gone. And somebody, your own peer group, sees you and understands you perhaps better than somebody who is further down in life. And then also somebody significantly younger is looking at the world in a very different way that perhaps you and I are subject and conditioned of our own upbringing, and we're looking at things quite differently. So I like that. But in terms of perhaps this might be from a mentor who was older or somebody of your peer group or maybe even younger, what do you think has been some of the best advice that you've received from a career perspective from some of these individuals over the years?
I could probably share a story then, Trevor, because as I think of that, it stays and resonates with me today. So my first director job with my first company I worked for, and you've named GE, I was fairly young. So I went into the CEO's office at the time, regional CEO, and he told me, Serge, the bigger you grow your career, the more humble you should be. Leave your ego at the door. And I think it's as simple as that. And it resonated so much. I think, to be honest, we don't need a job title to be leaders. We don't need stripes on our shoulders to be leaders. Everyone should be a leader as long as, what I said before, we have a core value system that we live by and breathe by. And this core value system differs, Trevor. Mine is different than yours, different than other people. And if I were to share what are the 5 core value systems that I have, they're very simple, really. They're being humble, respect, trust, right? And most important, the courage. The courage to sometimes not seek permission, just go and execute. And that's, I always talk to my team members. I say, you don't always need to come to me and ask me for permission. Go and execute. And that's the courage. But I think also, Trevor, we as leaders, we have the responsibility to create an environment in the workspace that fosters that allows people to take risk, to learn from their own mistakes. Because otherwise, the opposite to that becomes fear, and fear is detrimental to everything. So yes, be humble, leave your ego at the door, and have a core value system that you really, truly live by. And then I think the sky is the limit.
And I think that that resonates with people because they can connect with you more easily. What about some of those conversations maybe that you've had over the years with, with peers in terms of your career and the risks that you should take? What have been some of the risks that you've taken that have paid off now that you've the benefit of retrospect and being able to look back? And sometimes I notice in my own life, I look back at events and I recognize, that was actually the beginning of a new chapter, a watershed moment, an interaction, a meeting with somebody. And at the time, I didn't really recognize that's how it would develop, but that's what it ended up being. What about for you? What have been some of the big risks you've taken?
No, listen, I totally agree with you. And, for me, as you said before, I work for different companies. So if we think about it, now that you're asking me, I've worked for a publicly listed company, GE, right, for a very long time. One of the best companies in the world to form you and get us a solid foundation. Then I got the opportunity 14 years into it, when I thought the world was only where I am, to go to a private equity backed company and work in a totally different industry, an industry I've never even heard about, right? And I knew it was going to be tough. I knew it was going to be risky. I knew it was going to be a 50-50 chance for success, but I jumped in. And I jumped in, and it wasn't rosy all the time. There were success moments, there were failure moments, but what was there for sure was the learnings. And then 4.5 years into that, I got another opportunity to jump into a private company, which wanted to start from scratch and grow. And that was scary, but I also jumped into it. So I think, bottom line, I think, Trevor, curiosity and the urge to explore the unknown, I think, are traits that differentiate people, not only leaders, but people in general. If you're curious, if you have the urge to explore, if you really look at yourself always and compare your future self to yourself today to raise your own bar, then you'll have the courage to really own your career and jump in and take risks. And whether it's a success or a failure, it's always a learning. To your point, we always learn from these events. So I think those three milestones in my life, the three companies I worked for, and the totally different scenarios and backgrounds of those companies is what really shaped me. And what I would say was a risk. But here I am today, enjoying every day, happy, continuing to grow and continuing to learn.
And it ties in with one of your values, right? In terms of having the courage to do that. Because
Yes.
sometimes it can be scary, and it's easier to play safe and say, oh, I'm in a comfortable position here, I can keep doing what I'm doing. But that will probably come at the price or the cost in the future of you
But then
looking
to your
back and
point, I
saying,
mean,
did I really grow?
correct. And to your point, if comfort zone is easy, but what it does, I think also, Trevor, it keeps your bar very low, because you're comparing yourself today to yourself today. I want to compare myself in 10 years to myself today. That keeps the bar high. So it's exactly to your point. It's about really shaking that comfort zone.
And what about, you talk about shaking the comfort zone, and you've jumped into these organizations as the regional leader overseeing a big region. You're managing director for Middle East and Africa. So you're at the top of this regional organization. And something I hear a lot about leadership is how it can be lonely at the top. Do you buy into that as an idea, as a concept?
To be honest, Trevor, I don't. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe a lot of my peers would not necessarily agree with me. But the way I see it is, you have a choice. And you have a choice to be lonely at the top, or you have a choice to be engaging at the top. I mean, I believe in servant type leadership. I believe that I am there to serve my team members all the way through the organization until the blue collars on the ground, which really earn the buck, right? And of course, as leaders, there are moments where we have to be alone. We need to be alone. There are things that are confidential that we need to reflect on our own. And those are moments where you feel lonely. But I think the way to get through that is to really leverage the peer group of leaders that are around you. Now, whether it's within the same organization, so my counterparts in other regions where we talk about these things that could not be shared, or organizations like the one you run, Trevor, is where you put 150 of us, sometimes lonely people, to share thoughts and ideas and talk and really quench that feeling of loneliness. But honestly, I don't believe, if you really are too isolated at the top, you need to ask yourself the question, what am I doing wrong? It shouldn't feel so lonely.
One last question. Are there people that you would still go to for advice today, or do you feel like you have all the answers?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I do not have all the answers. And there are a lot of people that I go to for advice, including direct reports and my own team members, by the way, a lot of the time. And they pivot my thinking. But I also have mentors, which we spoke about. I have a more mature and a wiser mentor that I work with on a monthly basis, at least twice a month. And I have mentors from my peer group. And I also have younger mentors. So I ask questions all the time. And I think I will continue to do so.
Serge, it's always great to connect with you. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And thank you so much for coming on to Successful Perspectives and sharing your time and your insights.
Trevor, no, thank you. Pleasure is mine, and great to be here too.